Sends a message.
Yes, it does.
All right. Well, I'm excited. I think we're going live now. So for everybody who is joining us, welcome. It is Thursday night, so this is a different edition of Policy and Pilsner. I'm Vanessa DeMott, joining with my husband, David, and we have some amazing guests tonight. I just host Bryan Head and our other guest, special guest, Jennifer Hulan, owner of Water's Edge Winery. I just have to talk really quick. Am I echoing really bad for you guys?
You are echoing.
Yes.
Okay. Let's see if we can't fix this. I'll hand it back to Dave, and then he can introduce everybody.
Well, I'm wondering if we're echoing through Jennifer's computer. Are we on speakerphone?
One of them's muted.
No, my computer's muted, but my phone's live.
Huh. Weird. I don't. Do you hear an echo for me? I don't hear it.
No, you sound good.
I don't. No.
Is it just me then?
It's just enough.
All right. Well, gosh, that's a great way to get me to be quiet the whole night.
I wonder if it is my headphones. All right. Hold on. I tried to do something fancy because I don't like these. People keep making fun of my gamer headphones. So but I think my AirPods, I think they pick up
cool.
Vanessa. So
Those are the cool headphones nowadays. All the kids are wearing them.
All right. Well, here's what I think is we'll start with letting our new co-host, Bryan, start with what's in your pint, and we're going to take it around the table so we can all share what we're drinking, because it feels like it has been an insanely long week, and I think it's only been about 3 days so far. So, Bryan, what's in your pint?
I have like lemon lime sparkling water from Costco, so nothing super exciting tonight. But
You're hydrating. That's
right.
a good thing.
That's right.
Good for you. You're setting a great example.
Yeah, I also have a water bottle, so just regular water. So nothing too exciting.
It's all exciting. Jennifer, what's in your glass?
Well, I'm going to drink enough for both Bryan and myself. I own a winery, so in my glass, and I don't know if you can see this, but this is my pimp glass here. It's all blinged out. It was a gift from one of my managers, awesome. And it is Komodo Mosa. So we have a sparkling wine with a splash of our Komodo dragon. It's like a Komodo raspberry or a dragon fruit raspberry Shiraz, and it's just like a splash on top, and it is divine, absolutely divine.
Let's just all take a moment and just think about this wine. That sounds amazing. Just amazing.
Come in and have a glass. We're open. We're open.
I can't wait to talk about all that fun stuff. Dave, what's in your pint?
Well, I am trying again to restart the low carb diet because COVID has not been kind to my low carb lifestyle. So I have a Moscow Mule with diet ginger beer because that's acceptable. So
for sure,
that's what I'm drinking.
Delish.
And like Dave, I too. It's not that this is my second Moscow Mule of the night, but I am having the same thing. Just a little bit ahead of Dave.
It's just my first. I got off of work here in my garage where I spend all my life. And then I rode my bike back here for a half an hour and lifted some weights here in my garage /office /council chambers /everything.
Studio /
Then I got a drink.
That looked like the same cup. They use 2 cameras so you don't see 2 straws in the same cup.
Right.
Hey, I'm on a budget, Bryan. I got 4 kids.
We just spent a fortune filling up 10,000 gallons of water in a pool. So money on dishwashing.
So
that could have watered Bruce Baker's lawn for the whole summer, Vanessa.
I knew you were going to go there.
Oh Lord. Well, I'll give a quick city update on that.
You made him host. You made him host. You gave him the power.
He's citizen of the year. He gets to do what he wants.
This is
Nobody's taken that crown yet because they couldn't have the event, right? Because of COVID.
That's true. I think they delayed the event. So
you still hold the title. You got the crown.
So I think I've held it longer than anybody else at this point.
That's right. So with that, I'm going to give a quick city update. So Monday night we'll have a council meeting. This last Monday we didn't have a council meeting because of the holiday. And on our agenda we're going to actually talk water rates. The proposal is to not raise the rates because of COVID this coming year.
So we're looking to do 0%, and then they would have us reevaluate. No secret that I wasn't in favor of what they were proposing anyway. So we'll see where that discussion goes, and it'd be interesting if you're interested in water rates. I think you could have a lively discussion on Monday if you want to tune in and listen to that. Otherwise, a lot of still we'll be talking about COVID and what our costs are and all that fun stuff. So with that, now I'm echoing really bad.
Yeah, you're not too bad.
I hear myself. I
Oh.
sound good.
I think that's Ice Cube on your shirt. That's really giving you the confidence tonight.
That's right.
Channel your inner gangster, Dave. Do it.
I've done my nickel kind of confidence. So maybe Jennifer, maybe tell us about your business and how you got into the winery business.
Oh boy. So I'll give you the Reader's Digest version. So, oh gosh, probably 2011, I was laid off from a job, and my husband was offered a job out in Seattle. And so we rented our house here in Colorado. We moved out to Seattle. And when we got there, we realized he had been given a large enough bonus, or I guess a financial gain, a raise, that he said, you know, babe, this is your chance. I know you've been hating marketing and it's your time. What do you want to do when you grow up? And I mean, imagine somebody saying to you, like, this is your chance to live your dream. What do you want to do? And it's, by the way, very difficult question to answer if you've not really given a lot of thought. You know, that's a big question. So anyway, I don't know if any of you guys been to Seattle? Anybody?
When I was little.
When you're little?
It's a great town. I like Seattle.
Yeah, Seattle is wonderful, but the weather is horrible. So there's a lot of rain, and so I met some of the most amazing people I've ever known there. But from like a political standpoint, it was a little bit different than my background, and so I really struggled being there. So I drank a lot. You know, I went to the wineries. Woodinville is a great place where they have a whole bunch of wine rooms. And one night we're there drinking because it was raining again outside. And my husband said to me, hey, you know, we've talked about this. We keep going back and forth. You know, do you want to own like a McDonald's or like maybe a Hallmark store? And I was like, no, none of those things sound good. And I jokingly, and I'm pretty sure I was about a bottle and a half of wine into the night, I said, you know, I love wine. You know. And here we are.
So you mean to tell me, like, you weren't just independently wealthy, you didn't get this winery handed down from a rich uncle.
Nope.
You really had to invest your livelihood. You had to take a huge leap of faith and learn how to run a business from scratch. This wasn't just, again, it was a whim, but yet a lot of planning goes into taking that big step of business ownership and entrepreneurship.
Well, you know, Vanessa, you said something really important there. So I grew up pretty lower middle class. You know, we didn't have a lot of money. My dad worked at Ford. My mom worked for Ma Bell back in Detroit. And I grew up middle class. And so, you know, I was the first person in my family to go to college, and I worked really hard. I worked for 20 some years in marketing, and I was in PR. I did recruiting. So basically all of the things that set me up to own a business. I have a degree in business. I have a degree as a paralegal as well. But no, we are not financially set. I wasn't born with a silver spoon in my mouth. And my husband was also, he grew up in Louisiana. He grew up pretty poor as well, but both of us worked really hard, and we built, you know, a nice, comfortable middle class, upper middle class life with each of us working. And it was based on that. So we took to open this business, we took our 401ks and we used our house as collateral. We got a small business loan and we opened our business. So we came back to Colorado because I missed the sun. And I thought, if I'm going to open a business, I'm going to get stuck here. And I really want to be in a place where, you know, where I feel like it's more home for me. So we came back to Colorado and we opened the winery. It was in March of 2015. So we just celebrated our 5-year anniversary.
Wow. What a 5-year anniversary to get to.
Right in the middle of COVID.
Out there.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah.
Well, it's an amazing story, and I'm sure Dave and Brian have some really great perspectives on how that is. But we're about 16 minutes into our show, so for those of you who are just joining us, we're speaking with Jennifer Hulan, who is the owner of Water's Edge Winery. It's been in the news a little bit lately, and so to kind of address, I guess, that big elephant in the room, like Brian and Dave, your thoughts too. You're open for business now, right? It's
I
as of
am now.
yesterday, everybody was allowed to be, but
Correct.
there's a little bit of a path and some history to even how you got to yesterday. So,
Well, so one of the things that I would hit, and so I don't think anybody on this cast here is a stranger to the fact my family owns multiple businesses, multiple decades of working hard. My uncle started the restaurants and brought some of his family in, and eventually handed them over to his kids, who, even though they were given a nice business, they still have to work their tail off to continue to do it. The restaurant business is it's a kind of a cutthroat business, and I think that Jennifer, and I've heard you talk about this before, as far as like you're just at a place where you're starting to do well, because any kind of small business venture, those first, depending on the business, especially restaurants, those 2, 3, 4, 5 years, sometimes it takes even longer for you to start being profitable,
Sure.
from just breaking even or even under that. And so I think not everybody understands that perspective. I think one of the things, watching what you're dealing with and trying to advocate for you, because I know you and I know what you're about, and know that you're just trying to make a living, and allow your employees to make a living. And I understand people wanting to be safe as well, but I think there's a misconception about how hard that is. And like, I remember specifically somebody saying to me when I got in an argument about your business, saying, how selfish it is, and how, people could just get a new business and just get a new job. And I'm like, you don't understand what you're saying. Like, when somebody puts their whole livelihood up, like, you don't truly understand, obviously, what this person has done. And even in the case of my family, where they that would be very hard for them if their business went under. That's what decades of their family has done to
Sure.
support my uncle and his kids, and now his kids are supporting their kids with those
Right.
businesses. So it's not like, okay, tomorrow I'm going to open a new business. Like,
I can't believe somebody, and let me guess, let me just take a wild guess. The person that you were arguing with still was gainfully employed, still pulling a paycheck?
Yep. Well, and that's,
Yep.
and to me,
Every time.
like, we and it seems like it, there's the conversation of privilege, and I've heard people say, like, right now the most privileged person out there is the person who's still collecting a check. I'm in that demographic. I mean, we
Right.
definitely were hit by it, because Vanessa was doing work study and she couldn't after, because they closed the schools. Our daughter, who works in a fast food restaurant, she's not working, so I'm having to help her. But I make a good living, and I have a couple different things that bring in income, and I teach on the side, and so we're making it through. But we're lucky that we're not in that situation.
Right.
But like, I work for a franchisor, and I'm watching our franchisees, and even though they're essential businesses, they're still being hit.
For
So
sure.
it's a hard time for anybody who can keep operating, let alone the ones who can't operate. I mean, so I'm curious your perspective on that, and obviously that's, you would disagree, I'm sure, with that, but I think it's important for people to hear both sides. And one of the things I've kind of advocated for is, like, put yourself in the other person's
Uh-oh,
shoes,
Dave,
and
you
really.
locked up. I didn't hear anything you just said.
Yep. Can you hear me now? I don't know if you guys can hear me, or if I'm locked
I
up
can hear
still.
you.
Yep. I wonder if we lost Jennifer.
She's frozen on my screen, but I can hear you.
I think you're on mute. We're having technical problems.
well, there we
over
go.
here.
Okay, I think Jennifer's coming back. Hey, if you guys are watching the
There I
comments,
am. Yes,
There you
there
are.
you
sorry.
are.
I totally lost you guys. I didn't hear. I heard what's going on, or tell us something, and then all
Well,
of a
I
sudden you were
basically
gone.
just want, like, what's your perspective of that? You've put your livelihood into this, and I don't for a minute think that you're not trying to take, and I watched what you tried to do, agree with it or disagree with it. I think that you were trying to, how could I safely open my business back up? Because
Right.
you don't want to harm your customers
Right.
or your employees. You want, it's the opposite. You need to earn a living. Your employees need to earn a living. like maybe talk a little bit about that and your employees. Like I'd be interested to hear
Sure.
how it impacts them. I mean,
Absolutely. So the thing that we were facing, so we closed down. It was March 17th, I believe, if I remember the days correctly. And actually, we had a little bit of a scare. My chef said his brother had contracted COVID. That was Sunday. So we were doing just like kind of like, it was a weird time. Like, is the world burning down, or is this the next zombie apocalypse? Like what is going on right now? So we kind of were slowing down, and people were starting to stay home. And I remember Denver closed down, and we were still having people come in. And then it was like, okay, we need to close. Well, that Sunday rolled around, and my chef called me late at night, and he said, hey, my brother tested positive. I don't see my brother, but we watch his daughter. And I said, oh boy, and again, we still had no data. The whole world was coming to a stop. So we closed down for a week. And during that week, actually, it was the very next day, my husband and I came. And when you're a restaurant, you have food that's prepped, you have, bread that's sitting out, you have sauces that are made, things that are parboiled and par baked, ready for service the next day. And we shut down. So we had to come in, we cleaned it all up, bottles of wine that were open, and we're thinking we're going to be closed for 2 weeks. So we actually packed it all up, donated it to a couple of the families that live behind us that we thought maybe were going to start struggling because we knew their situation, and just wherever we could to help, to help out, because there's only so much we can eat, although Chef D's spinach and artichoke dip is amazing. I can't eat a giant bowl of it. So we did hand it out. So, and then the very next day, my chef called me and said, well, this niece of his had been tested, and she tested negative. So the scare was kind of over immediately. But we thought, you know what, let's just take a week. Let's figure out what's going on. Everybody is laid off for a week. All of us. We're going to come in, we're going to clean, we're going to retool, because now we started hearing things like, well, apply for this loan and you can get the EIDL, you can get the PPP. We weren't a to-go restaurant. We're a winery and a bistro, but we were given the opportunity, like, hey, you can do curbside to go. And I thought, well, God, we better scramble. We need to go buy all the stuff to be prepared to do food to go, take and bake, things like that. And retool our menus, and which is a huge undertaking. It's not just like an overnight thing, from the restaurant industry. You don't just like, oh, now we're going to start doing pizza. Like that's not what you were doing before. So anyway, we did that for a week. And after a week, we came back. So we relaunched, we reopened, and we started that. And that led into April. We took a huge financial hit, even though people were very generous. They were buying bottles. They didn't know what was going on in the world. And a lot of them were starting to get laid off, or they were hearing, well, gosh, we're not essential, so we're not going to be going back to work. You're going to have to work from home, or you're losing your job. So we have, our customers range from independently wealthy to people that are scratching just like the rest of us every month to try to, come out and have some fun and buy some wine. So anyway, so we reopened and we did the curbside to go, and I watched our sales dwindle to the point where, and for anybody watching us out there, let me tell you, restaurants work on such slim margins. We're talking about 5%. If a food is sent back, that cuts into that 5%. If prices go up, that cuts into that 5%. Every time a new tax is levied, every time unemployment or let's say a minimum wage, when that was passed, my costs go up, my insurance goes up, my minimum wage goes up, all of that stuff. So it all cuts into that, and restaurants work on very slim margins. So we got our butts handed to us in April, and it was scary. And then during that time, just kind of be a little quicker about it. During that time, all this data started rolling in, and what we were hearing didn't seem to match up with the level of shut down and stay home and don't go out. And it started with, hey, just stay home for 2 weeks. We're just going to flatten this curve. And then it was, well, 2 more weeks. And now wear masks and don't go out of your house. And then it was 2 more weeks. And at this point, if those of us out there that know people in the medical industry, we were still seeing those people come in. I have a wine club member that runs a hospital, and I would say to him, hey, are you guys overwhelmed? Because that's what this whole point is, right? We're staying home because we don't want you to get overwhelmed. We're not saying that we're not going to get sick, but we want to make sure that if we do, there's a bed for me somewhere. And he was saying, girl, the hospital is 60% empty. All of these people, I have nurses on my family, and my mom's side of the family, and all of them, the hospitals are empty. It's time to get back to work. And I was looking at, my numbers and saying, we're not going to make it. And, I'm doing my best to keep my employees paid. And, but there's single women that are trying to feed themselves that are thousands of miles away from their home. They don't have backup. They rely on me creating wealth for them, giving them a job, people coming in and dining and, donating or tipping them. That's how they make their money. So this was a very scary time, and everybody was struggling. And I looked at their faces and I said, I'm responsible. I'm the head of this family, if you will. And I need to make sure that they stay safe and healthy, not just physically, but financially healthy. And that's when I decided to open on the 1st. And I think that's where you were going with this story, right? When I illegally or against the order reopened, right?
Yep. And so, and maybe this is where I think Bryan has some really good points he and I have talked about as far as, we've had a lot of conversation, a lot of disagreement about like masks and stuff. Like Westminster mandated masks. I was against the mandate. Recommended people do what's safe, wear masks, listen to the guidelines, but I always fall on the side of not government force. Like it's not their job to take care of me. It's not their job to, they're not my mom and dad. So, but Bryan, I think he and I have had a lot of conversations about that, and specifically, what are the real challenges? What are the real dangers that are created by this situation? And I really think that the ripple effect that's going to happen in the economy that we're already starting to see, and we don't know how long this is, how far reaching it's going to be. But Bryan, I think, has a really good, point of view on that. And that part of the reason why I asked him on, from his time in the chamber and all the things he does in business. So maybe Bryan, share what, kind of your take from that point of view on it that, I think you and I agree people kind of miss in this conversation often.
Yeah, I mean, I think you and I have talked a lot about masks and who wears them, and I think the thing I said the other day is nobody's going to really remember who voted on the mask mandate when we're all standing in bread lines, because I am not involved in an official capacity with the chamber anymore, but I was a founding board member of the chamber and really got to know the businesses, at least in this community, over the last several years. And so, I've talked to more of them than I can count right now. And the stories are all similar to Jennifer's, right? These aren't people that are extraordinarily wealthy. These are people that put their 401k or leverage their house or, the little bit of money that they had to build a business. And they're not, taking lavish vacations all the time. They're just trying to make a life, right? And they're not exploiting their employees. They're trying to look out for their employees, and they're concerned about their employees' well-being and things like that. I talked to somebody a couple of weeks ago that was just like, very, very emotional, in tears about, how do I make sure, is it better to let my employees go on unemployment? Is it better to try to have them, create something around here that they can do, and not sure if they can pay them. So, I think we're in society today, I think we're slaves to binary thinking, where we think that you can't be concerned about the virus and be concerned about business, or you can't, you're either
Right.
one or the other. It's red versus blue. It's good versus evil. It's, and that's not the case. I mean, people that are concerned and voicing concerns about their businesses or their employees or where they're going to find their next meal or next paycheck, it doesn't mean they don't care about those that are most vulnerable to this virus. Obviously, people are getting it, and people are passing away from it, and that's devastatingly sad. and we should do what we can to protect those folks. And I've not talked to one business owner or one business person that that would dispute that. But we've got to have real conversations about the effect that this is having on real people's lives. And I think there's the Jennifer mentioned a couple of her employees are single moms. I've talked to a lot of single parents that are in that same boat, right? It feels like it's disproportionately hitting people that don't necessarily have white collar jobs where they can sit in their air conditioned home and work
Right.
on a company provided laptop. It's people that are hustling for a living, waiting tables or working on cars or whatever it is, that is slowed by this thing. And I think we've got to have real conversations about this stuff, or we're not going to get anywhere. If we're just going to stick to this binary thinking that you're on one side or the other, nothing's going to get better.
Yeah, I think.
Right. I've had people accuse me of oh, you just want to sell wine. And I think that's so short-sighted a lot of times. It's not about even just about keeping my business open. Yeah, I don't want to lose my home. I don't want my employees to lose theirs, right? They have the potential to go hungry. They're not paying their rent. And it's my responsibility to help them along. And I've done everything I can from during a time when there was no toilet paper anywhere. Well, I'm a restaurant, we have stock of it. So I actually did a promotion, buy a bottle of wine, get a free roll of toilet paper. And it was kind of fun and tongue in cheek. But I actually had some people say, wow, thank you, because I really needed toilet paper. I've got money to buy it. I just can't find it anywhere. So, but yes, absolutely. Our motivation of opening up is not because we don't care about our community. It's because we do care about our community, because what we had been hearing during that time that we were just doing curbside to go is child abuse was up, spousal abuse was up. People were suicide, and unfortunately teen suicide is way up, because these are scary times and people don't know where their next meal is going to come from, or they just don't know, like they have no direction. And a lot of these young kids that are in school, the way they eat, who's protecting them are their teachers, and we're shutting down schools. But if you look at the numbers, these kids are not the problem. They are not, they can get sick, but they're not passing away exponentially from this disease or this virus. It's important to look at data. We've got 1,100 people that have passed away in Colorado, and every single one of them is an absolute tragedy. But we have 5.6 million people locked down for a virus that potentially, is the equivalent here in Colorado, maybe not nationwide, but here in Colorado, of the flu. And I get it. If you've got it and you are dying of it, it's horrific and bad. And I'm not trying to minimize that at all. But we do need to think about the economy. We need to think about our neighbors. We need to think about single moms. How are kids if they're not going back to school this fall, how are parents going to go back to work? How are they going to feed their families? And we need to not discount that. That is not, we don't just throw that away because we're scared of a virus. That's just, I don't think that's a reasonable response.
Well, and I think another thing you kind of touched on is, the narrative that we've been given and the way the data has matched up, I think has not been even. And I think initially all of us, we're like, okay, let's see what happens. Like, I get it. Like, I'm totally against us shutting stuff down. I remember when they started calling me as a policymaker locally, not that we were making a lot of these hard decisions, but I still got plenty of phone calls, and I still was like, you want to do what? Like until they explained, and then I think everybody got it. But I think one of the other dangers of what we're doing is I see between the media and the government really hammering, like, anytime there's a young person who gets sick, and the data doesn't show that young people are invincible, but it also doesn't show they're at a great risk. And I think my fear, and Vanessa, maybe you could touch on this, from the longstanding mental effects that this could create when we're creating a society of fear on our kids right now. And I have big concerns about that. Like, I get the masks and I get being safe, but I also, we need to be realistic about what the conversation is. And to Brian's point, it can't all be like, I can live in all those different realms of, I'm concerned about the virus and people's well-being, I'm concerned about my financial well-being, and I'm concerned about people's just general well-being.
Well, like there's that great example of the Venn diagram, and you can live in all of these areas. You can be concerned about the virus, you can be concerned about everybody's health, and you can be concerned about somebody's business. Where I have seen such fascinating discussions happen over, especially this last week, as we talk about schools and we talk about what is it going to be like for these kids to go back to school. Everybody has their opinion on it, but some of the experts have pointed out, are there going to be a younger generation of kids, kind of that K-2, who are going to be so afraid? Are we conditioning them to be so afraid to breathe the air around them that they have to wear a mask? We talk about, you're wearing the mask to protect me. Well, we're protecting everybody. And in that everybody is me. In that everybody is my child or somebody who can't wear that mask for a health reason. And we so quickly created that divisive conversation. We forgot that we all were at that same goal of wanting to protect our neighbors. And it really escalated, and you could put the blame anywhere, but it sounds like we're all coming back to that same premise of, we just want people to have that right to liberty and to their life. And we want our kids to be able to go back to school. And I'll be honest, our kids are going to hang out with all of their friends all summer long. So then to send them back to school and tell them that then they have to social distance from each other when they've been in the same backyards and the same playgrounds all summer long, there just needs to be a lot more thought going into it. Again, it's not that we want people to die. We want people to live. It is
Correct.
so the opposite of that narrative.
Thank you for saying that. That's so important.
Yeah.
People have stopped living. They're so afraid to die that they've literally, so many, not all people, there's a huge piece of this population that are sitting outside of my winery right now that are eating, they're drinking, they're not wearing masks, they're laughing, they're enjoying one another.
Right.
And I'm going to tell you guys, I opened up on the 1st. I went to a rally downtown because I am also a freedom person. I believe people should have the right to choose. And I know I've gotten a lot of blowback. I've heard from my neighbors and some people that have said, yeah, but you're making choices for other people by being open. And my argument is, come or don't come. But for people that want to live and that aren't afraid or think, hey, how about herd immunity? If we get sick and get healthy, I know 6 people that have had COVID-19. Not one of them ended up on a respirator. Not one of them went to a hospital. They've all healed and they're fine. And unfortunately, that's not every story, but the majority of people that will get this are going to pull through. And based on that, we need to be considerate of that, right? I don't live in fear of AIDS. I don't live in fear of hepatitis. I don't live in fear of the flu every year. We live our lives, and sometimes you get sick and sometimes you get really sick. But the whole point of this stay at home and stay away from people was to flatten the curve. And that was the argument for so long. And we've done that. It's time to get back and start living again. And not everybody's going to be comfortable with that. And we are 100% fine with people that want to stay home. We value that. We are still doing curbside to go. You can come and pick up food, take out, appreciate them. And we all have our truth that we need to lead. But for the rest of us that want to get back to life and live, we need to have that opportunity.
So you've really hit on something really, really important that I think every entrepreneur, every true capitalist all knows. If you're going to survive the hardest of times, you have to be willing to pivot and try something new. And sometimes that's created a whole new side of your business, maybe you never thought possible. That's exactly what you've spoke to is, you went out on a limb in the first place to start this business. Now you've had to, evolve it a little bit to be able to meet this new demand. And how do you see that going forward to support employees, to support just what this dare I say that new normal of your business?
Ooh, don't say new normal. Don't
Do you
forget.
do you keep the curbside? Do you keep, do you keep a
Yeah.
lot of that?
I think it's gonna, as any small business owner knows, you go with where the demand is. You have to be malleable. You have to go with the flow. At some point, the candle maker basically had to go out of business because Ben Franklin came up with the light bulb, right? Or whoever. But the typewriter makers had to go out of business because IBM showed up. So life changes, and you do have to be malleable, or you die. You either have to change or you die from a business standpoint. So absolutely 100% right. And then we'll
So-
drink
to that.
So
Hey, we'll
interesting,
drink to that.
interesting trivia since we're not doing trivia tonight, and Jennifer just brought up GE making the light bulb. They've been making the light bulb since it was invented, and then they just announced today they're not going to make it anymore. So
Oh,
anyway,
Really?
yeah, it's true.
Oh.
But hey, before we get too far away from the school point you were making, Vanessa, so I serve on a school board, and we talk a lot about the science of this thing, and I see a lot on social media about everybody's now a viral disease expert, and everybody's got 27 doctors in the family and that kind of thing, telling them this and that. But here's the thing: I believe the scientists. I think it's a dangerous disease. I think it has a higher contagion factor than some of the other diseases that we see. These people spent their life studying this stuff, and I believe them. I think Dave, somebody at City Council the other day mentioned, maybe it was Anita, said it was like a whiplash of information. The scientists and doctors were saying one thing, don't wear masks, not necessarily, and then 2 days later they were saying wear them. But so I'm not going to argue the science with the scientists or medicine with the doctors, but I do think I serve on a school board, and you talked about kids and things like that, and then I've obviously been active in the business community. It's dangerous, but there's also danger in other things, right? There's danger in a mom not being able to earn an income to feed her kids. There's, I think, danger in depriving kids of social interaction in vital developmental years. I mean, there's tons and tons of research on that. Those things are very dangerous too. And we've seen our kids do amazing things this year, adapting to this new way of learning and things like that. But I think time is going to show that there's going to be consequences for depriving our kids of some of these opportunities. And we're going to see, malnutrition is a major factor when you're talking about childhood development, brain development, things like that. So that single mom that's not able to feed her kids because she can't, wait tables or go to her non-essential employer, that's all going to have long-term consequences. So when we talk about this type of pandemic, we got to talk about the science, but we also have to talk about the other factors that are out there. It's not all eggs in one basket. We've got to think about all of these things and look at the full picture.
Well, isn't that how we? I'm sorry, Dave. Just really quick. I don't want to dominate the conversation, but isn't that how we do? How we live our lives every day, right? We get in a car. The potential to get into a car accident is much higher than many of the viruses or diseases that are out there, but we still do it, right? We take chances every day with things, and it's a balance, and it's a work-life balance. So I think that's where we are with this virus as well. We have decisions to make.
Absolutely, and you make a great point. I was in insurance for a long time, and if you talk about driving in cars, the most dangerous scenario is when somebody's driving drunk, right? So, we could put breathalyzers in every car. We could outlaw alcohol. That's sacrilege. To a winery. Jennifer's eyes just lit up. Good thing we're staying at home right now. But you could shut down the roadways on the 4th of July, New Year's Eve, and whatever the third highest holiday for
St.
traffic
Patrick's Day.
fatalities. St. Patrick's Day. That's the one I was missing. You can flatten the curve that way, but we choose to trade risks, right?
Right.
And I think, and we have to look at the full picture when we're doing that, right? On those days, people still have to get back and forth to work. They have to take their kids here and there. There's the vast majority of people are driving responsibly. They're taking the precautions that they need to. We're not going to let the small minority ruin it. So we're looking at a broader picture, just like Jennifer's saying.
Well, and that's
on
kind
our
of the point
day-to-day
I
life.
was going to get to is it's life is a series of calculated risks, like and freedom is dangerous, and that's one of my favorite terms because it's true. And like I always think when they talk about like right now people living their life or not living their life, not to be cliche, but I always think of Braveheart, and he was talking about you could go home now and live longer, but are you truly free? And like that's really the question that often comes to my mind when we're talking about freedom versus not, and do we have the choice to make these choices for ourselves or do we not? Because I mean that's do we do we want to live in that society? Like I don't. At some point, yeah, we had to do what we had to do, but at some point you got to let us get back to life. And I hate the term the new normal as well, because I think it should be an improved normal. One of the points I always bring up in any conversation, whether in city government, whether we come down on the same vote or not, I always ask the question, what did we learn? Because I think we should always be willing to learn, whether I win an argument or not. I always want to know, what did we learn from it? And I think you got to some of the deregulation that we've seen through this, and one of the questions I'm continually asking, are we going to allow people to continue to do business this way if it's beneficial? Like we just had an emergency ordinance in Westminster to allow people to go out on the sidewalks so that they could be in more open free space and follow guidelines. One of my first questions is this something that's going to be flexible enough that we could do it past this if it makes sense where they're at? Because same with the way that we've loosened restrictions on alcohol, it's worked out pretty well, I think. So I hope that the governor realizes some of those areas where he got out of the way of business to let them survive, and realize, why not let them do that ahead of time? So I hope that they're, instead of us just always continually looking at how we need to clamp down on our lives, what have we learned that can actually make things better by loosening up on certain things? And I've seen a lot of shift in business to be able to survive this. So
I think there's some good points there. Dave, you remember there was a pizza place here in Westminster a few years back that they had a garage door that opened up to a patio. It was next to a regular door that opened up to a patio. We had an event there, and I was talking with the owner, and he was saying, we've been waiting I asked him to open the garage door. He said, we can't. He said, why? They said, we've been waiting for 6 months for a permit so that we can open the garage door. And things like that. So I think you got to give credit where credit is due when things kind of hit the fan. I think, the governor and others started repealing regulations. And I think we're seeing now that some of those were probably, not probably, some of those definitely were unnecessary and hindered innovation and business. So hopefully those regulations stay gone once things get back to normal. But I think business is showing what it can do when you take the chains off.
I think one of the other things that I am, you're starting to see some of it, and I'm curious where it lands between masks and business and lockdowns. At some point, people start going to court because they're like, you're infringing on our freedom and you don't have a right to do it. And I've seen a lot of courts starting to land on the side of the businesses and the citizens saying, you know what, we don't have a right to do that. We don't have a right to tell them how to live. So I'm curious, and that'll play out over time, but I think that it'll be really interesting to see what happens in the courts for the next 12 to 24 months over this.
I think we're going to see I'm sorry, I don't know if you were talking to me. I cut out for a second, but I think I actually have an attorney, and we're going to be suing.
That was going to be my question to you. So you had discussed, you opened up a little bit earlier than what the rest of Colorado was allowed to do. So a couple things with that. I mean, have you heard from a lot of your customers that had walked in? And to preface, everybody came in on their own free will. Nobody was forced or drug in there and forced to drink delicious wine and have amazing bistro. And everybody came in on their own free will. So have you heard from a lot of customers beyond that? And where is that path now? You opened up before you were supposed to. What kind of legal
Right.
thing? You're open now.
Right. So just a quick overview. So we opened on the 1st, and then health department called. That was a Friday. Saturday, they were closed, so it was a blessing, and I didn't have to hear from anybody. And we had some wonderful. Can you guys hear me?
We can
Yep,
hear you.
yep,
but
you're
your
good.
face
I'm
is
locked up
frozen.
again.
The intranet.
Well, it's a good thing you make great wine. Maybe stay in the wine business and don't go into technology.
Are you guys there?
We're still here.
Wouldn't it be
'Cause this is
nice
the
if we were all
best part
just
of
sitting
your
in a room
story.
together drinking wine?
I know someone.
I have been to your winery at least one time with Bryan, as a matter of
Oh,
fact.
there we are.
There you are.
I'm not sure what's going on here.
That's okay. It's because you're in the best part of the
User
story.
error. Right, right. So anyway, so we closed down we opened up on the 1st. Health department called Saturday. Had a lovely Saturday because they weren't there. And then we reopened. We were closed on Sunday and Monday. We reopened on Tuesday, and health department showed up, or they called and referred me to the attorney general's office. And we had a conversation with them. I hired an attorney at that point because they were coming after me. And guys, I'm sorry, my
you're
internet
back.
connection is unstable.
We're getting
It's
Zuckerberg.
not me. It's not me. I know.
No,
I think you
you're
don't want to
probably
hear part of the
fighting
story.
some preteens for their Fortnite bandwidth. That's usually what goes on in our house. So
Is that it? Yeah. There should be no Fortnite going on at the winery, I'll tell you. Anyway, so we'll just wrap this up really quick. So I was open for about 7 days. I talked to the health department 3 times. The attorney general's office called. My liquor license. So I have a state liquor license. They called, and basically threat. They threatened, hey, why are you open? What are you doing? And my argument to them was, hey, isn't this is this an order? Is this a law? Is this a requirement? Or this is kind of the constitutional piece of things. Is, every morning I woke up and I was waking up here in America, but I felt like I was living in Russia. People just telling me, like, you can't go to work, you can't have your business open. And so anyway, by day 7, it was a Thursday, 4 police officers and 2 people from the health department showed up with a immediate to close order. So we closed immediately that day. And I don't even remember what the question was. There's so much me being kicked out.
No, just kind of in that whole scope. I think there were even some questions in the comments of did you have any of your customers actually get sick? Was there any spike that is claimed to have happened from that event? I mean, there was a
Not
lot
at
of
all.
coverage coming from it.
Right.
And people not social distancing, that was a huge complaint. Nobody was wearing a mask because that's got to be so easy to wear a mask and drink wine. I mean,
Right.
So I guess there's some of those pieces. It's now 28 days later. Everything was rough.
Yeah, let's back up 1 week. So I had gone down to the rally downtown because I felt like the government was overstepping by making us close down, and it was time to open up. And that was the end of April. And no, not one person that went to the rally has gotten sick. We're all connected through some Facebook group. And we keep reaching out. I'm like, this is important. Does anybody know? Are you sick? Or is there anything going on? And so far, the answer has been no, nobody's been sick. People were here. I had a whole bunch of people here on the 1st, and none of those people got sick. Are you guys still there? I think
Yeah,
I lost
still
you
there.
again.
We can hear you. We can hear you.
You freeze beautifully, though. Let me tell you, just beautifully.
So while she's unfreezing, I was there. I was with Jennifer right after she closed that day. I think it was the 1st. the days all blur together now. But
I'm back.
there
Sorry.
you are.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. I keep kicking out. But to answer your questions, no, not one person has gotten sick. We don't wear masks. I've been hugging and shaking hands for over a month now, and not one person I know here at the winery has gotten sick. I have had some customers that are unhappy that we've been open, but for every one of them, I've had 10 new customers that said, thank you for standing up for our rights, and we are happy to support you. And they've been here almost every single day since I've been open. So we reopened
And I
yesterday.
think two things that, and Jennifer can correct me if I'm wrong here, but the first is on the day that Jennifer opened, or one of those last couple days that she was open, Channel 7, Denver 7 News sent in some reporters undercover, and they were, my impression at least was they were talking to her employees, and it seemed as though they were kind of trying to bait them into
For sure.
talking about how they were being exploited by their employer and things like that. And I've heard that from a couple other businesses. Second thing is she Jennifer, at least you shared a voicemail. I'm not sure if it was one that was left for you or for somebody else, from a delightful young man.
Yes, that was me.
Who said essentially, why do you think you're so special that you can stay open to make a buck and risk everybody else's lives? And
Sure.
I think something that is of growing concern, I think, as I look across society, and not just this pandemic, but just some of the work that I've done with the chamber over the years, is there's a growing perspective, I think, that that employers are kind of takers and greedy and taking advantage of employees, and profit motive is this evil thing. When really, I was there as Jennifer and her employees were kind of saying their tearful goodbyes, not knowing when they're going to see each other again. And it is like Jennifer said, it's a family in most places. We've got businesses just like that here in Westminster, where they're actual, blood relative families that are having to send folks home, but also just, people that have been working together for a long time. So I think one of the things that we do, and I'm not sure that I have a good answer for this, but I think pro-business groups like chambers have a responsibility to do things like this, where they communicate the importance of business to the fabric of a community, and those that take risks to start businesses. They're not these greedy takers. Of course, you see all these billionaires on the news and stuff, but that's not most business owners. Most business owners are people that leverage their 401k or their house or the little bit of money that they had to start a business, and if they have any level of success, maybe they can employ some folks, and those people, to a person, I can't think of a business in Westminster that I've visited where the people that own that business don't really care about their employees and the community. And I think we need to do a better job of communicating that, because we have the news media going into Jennifer's business. We have people leaving nasty voicemails for her about, you're exploiting the world just to make a buck. And that's just not the case. We've got to have a bigger conversation. I know I keep saying that, but we've really just kind of sunk to the level of vitriol and assigning the worst possible motivations to the person on the other side, and we've got to get past that.
And one of the other things I'd seen, so I've got a lot of calls from business owners in Westminster, mostly wanting me to connect them with the health department or the county commissioners or the people who actually can do something about them opening, because at the city level, we're taking, for the most part, we're taking our cues from above and doing what the health department or the state says. And we've tried the best to make sure that, we're advocating that they are consistent, because we're in 2 counties and, it gets confusing. But, like there's some certain fitness type businesses that I've got some phone calls from that, the way that the regulations don't fit them well, even though they fit in that category of business. And, one of the things I'm really hoping that they allow people to do is be innovative in the ways that they're trying to be safe, because not one size fits all. I mean, that's the true in business, whether there's a COVID situation going on or not. And, some of these regulations with like different fitness or personal training kind of businesses that I'm seeing specifically in those areas is like, you can only have X amount of people in the building, even if the building's, big enough that they could socially distance. And the problem is, and I've heard people be like, oh, well, you should, same kind of thing. Like, you're just being greedy. Like, no, it takes them to turn on their lights, have somebody come in, run the electricity and get paid to come in and do a personal training session. There's a margin to it, right? There's a cost, and to make money and be profitable so they could pay their employees and make it worth opening, they have to be able to at least do a certain level. And I think that, the people who are making the wise decisions for health need to listen to the people who understand how to run their businesses and try to at least meet in the middle, and I think that, to Bryan's earlier point, it's gotten to this, well, you don't care because you're not listening, so you don't care. And I don't think that that's the reality of what people are doing. They're trying to survive this. They're trying to make sure their business still has their doors open, post COVID. So,
I think from my perspective, it's a bunch, and please don't take this the wrong way because I know you're an elective bureaucrat, but it's a bunch of unelected bureaucrats at our health department, and many of which have never ever owned a business or worked outside of government, right? So these are people that haven't been in the private sector. They don't know. They think they're trying, and I don't fault them. They're trying to do their best, but they need counsel from people like me. They need to hear from us. And unfortunately, when they're unelected, they have no responsibility to us. So we need to remove the power from places like our health department and put it back in your hands, because you have a responsibility to the people that voted for you. So you have a reason to sit down with them and hear them out. Where, I'm under Tri-County Health. The people at Tri-County Health, I'm sure they're doing their best, their absolute best that they can do, but they are not business owners. They, at no time before they came and shut me down, did they come and say to me, why are you open? What have you done to make sure that you keep safe? Because you probably know best. And one of the things people don't think about, and the people, my haters is what I like to call them, or the Karens in the neighborhood that are complaining about me. They didn't come in, they didn't come and see what I did, but they don't understand that I already fall under the purview of a health department. For 5 years, I've had a stellar report from the health department, right? So I take keeping people safe and healthy very seriously. I've already done that. It's literally the backbone of my job as a food establishment, to make sure people are healthy and safe and they don't get sick. And every year when the flu is going around or any other virus is going around, because we have flu season, like November to March or so every year, we have to doubly clean things and make sure we're extra washing our hands in between each thing. Like, we already do all of this. And it's kind of like, well, they've given us the responsibility of keeping people safe. Why wouldn't they come and ask us, okay, like, this is where you need to shine. Tell me, how do we make sure that you can keep people safe? Not like shut down and we can't allow you to be open. Because again, we're still Americans. We have constitutional rights, and you cannot just shut down. You cannot take away people's livelihoods and their ability to feed their family because you're afraid. And that's what I'm most worried about. I think I lost you guys again.
No, we can still hear you. You just froze, but I think I want to hit on the point of, you saying that you didn't want to offend me. Quite frankly, one of the most frustrating things that I've heard in this whole thing is that when people tell me, because I stick up for people's rights to have a business and earn a livelihood, that I'm somehow demeaning or frankly pissing on my responsibility as an elected official. Whereas I see my number one responsibility as an elected official is that I am here to protect your Constitution. I took an oath to the Constitution. I took an oath to the state, federal, and our local charter. That's what my oath is. And so, yeah, like, I should look out for people's well-being, but that includes looking out for your rights. And two, my view of government is, I did not get elected to tell you how to run your life and how you could be most safe. I did it so that you can decide what is best for you, so that you can decide how to run your life. And that's it. And then I was elected to make sure the city does what's wise with your money. I mean, that's the way I see my job. So like, I agree with you 100%. We're about an hour. So what I'd like to do is give everybody, starting with Jennifer, then Bryan and Vanessa, kind of just a closing word on this. I think it's been a great discussion, and I really appreciate you all joining us. But what's kind of your parting bit that you would tell anybody who has watched this now or might watch it in the future?
I guess if you were talking to me, my final words would be trust that I'm not evil. I'm not trying to do anything bad. I'm literally good. It's just from a different perspective. If you're sitting at home and you're scared, stay home. And sometimes people need to blaze trails and test the waters and make sure it's safe. And that's what we're doing. I have people out here coming in. People are excited to be out eating and dining again. But we need to live as free people. And again, Dave, one of my favorite things about you is what you just said. You stand up for the Constitution. We need to protect our rights. I mean, we do have rights as American citizens. And it's not just about that. I'm not trying to shake the Constitution at people and yell at them about politics, but we need to stand up for our rights and say, this is enough. It's time to open up. Let me do what I know how to do. And if it doesn't work out, then it doesn't work out. But give me the ability and give people the right to choose. That's all I want, is the freedom to choose, to make decisions. And that's what these folks want out here. People are supporting me. They're coming out in droves. So I've been very successful since I was public enemy #1. People, certain people have really appreciated it. Not everyone, but I may have lost some customers, but I've gained a whole new level of customer, and I appreciate that you guys are doing that. And I love people like you that understand that it's all about the Constitution and protecting our rights. So thank you.
Yep, absolutely. Bryan.
So I would say, thanks to Jennifer for really leading the charge on some of these issues. It's not a fun place to be. She's getting horrible messages and things like that. But I think she's adding a very important perspective to all this. I've got to address a couple of the comments. I saw Dave Carpenter asked if I was for prohibition. I am not for prohibition. Thanks, Dave. Just wanted to clear that up for you. Also, Keelan, good to see you. Class of 17, best ever. But I see Christine Wares is on here. Christine's got a great local business, another woman-owned business. Does a ton for the community, does a ton for veterans.
First woman-owned brewery, I believe.
I believe you're right. I think that's the
give
first
credit where credit's due.
First female-owned brewery in Colorado, if not the country. And it's just an awesome place to be. And Christine was one of the founding board members of the chamber, has done a lot for this community. And so I would say, just parting thoughts. I think I would encourage people not to prioritize their own fear over that of somebody else, right? So we've talked a lot about the business owner's fear tonight, and I think that's very important. I think we have to acknowledge that people are afraid on the other side as well, right? They're seeing statistics and they're hearing doctors that they trust say scary things. And so I think we've got to acknowledge that and not diminish that, but also explain that we've got to look at the broader picture of what this is doing to our businesses, to our people in our community, their ability to provide for their family, people, their ability to just take care of their day-to-day needs and get the things that they need to get. And then our kids, I mean, like we talked about earlier, the kids not having the social interaction, the opportunity to play sports and do the things that they do, that's going to take a toll too. So let's have conversations and have conversations about the whole picture without vilifying the other side. And I think that's how we get productive things done. So that would be my parting shot, is just let's not prioritize our own fear over somebody else's, and let's expect the same from them. And when they do, let's tell them about it. So.
Great.
Good. That's good parting words. Well, to kind of requote something that Dave had said, he's, anytime that staff comes back and as a council, as a board, those good leadership will ask, well, what have we learned? And I think Jennifer spoke so true to say that we have people sitting in positions that first don't answer to our residents, to our taxpayers, to our business owners, and they have very valuable insight. This is what they do day in and day out. We always talk about experts and subject matter experts. She's an expert at what she does, and that whole what have we learned from this? I had answered a question weeks ago about, if you're in this position, if you were a state representative now, what is something you would learn from this? And I say, well, hindsight's 2020. It's so easy to sit here and say, well, knowing all the information I know now, here's what I would have done. But creating a task force of people like Jennifer, of business owners and community members that represent those things maybe you don't always think of, that maybe the governor doesn't think of, because it's been so frustrating to sit back and be a resident and be told to stay at home when you see there are people out at work. And I applaud the government for making really good decisions and fixing our roads and getting landscaping done during this time. But to be told as a non-essential person that you need to stay home, again, there's so much to be said for that, leading by example, creating task force that really take into account all of that information, Jennifer, that you've shared tonight, that you don't run a business of food and drink and not have everybody's health number one priority every single day. So there's so much to be said for bringing in all those different expertise across the board. So I think in closing, as a candidate, I love doing this because every time we do it, I learn something new. I learned something from the education realm when we had ours on Tuesday, to learn something tonight about business and those struggles, the struggles that you had before COVID, and now what you have to do to pivot and evolve and create that same wealth for you and your employees going forward. And I know next week we'll get to learn even more. So this is always a great learning experience for all of us. So thank you, Dave.
You said Vanessa, if you were a state rep. So if you were a state rep, you would have given yourself a 7.7% raise today.
Really?
Did you see that?
No.
No, I guess.
So-
Guess I missed that one.
Congratulations on that next
Really?
year.
In this
So-
budget, they passed a raise for themselves, huh?
That's
So
what I
a
read.
raise, as well as they don't have to go to work.
Well, they're
Right.
back at work now.
Correct. But
Well, but didn't they vote to then do remote
they
voting?
changed the rules. They changed the
They
rules,
changed
yeah,
the
so they
rules.
don't have to go. But you can't testify virtually, is what I read.
So Dave, I
read
think,
more.
I know we're trying to wrap up, but that's something I think that's been really frustrating for Westminster citizens, is that there's so much discussion going on with council and you guys are making decisions, and every 2 weeks there's citizen comment. Every citizen gets 5 minutes to talk to you guys, to rip you guys a new one, whatever it is. And that has not happened, well, in any council right now, and decision after decision is getting made. And I think that voice of the people feels lower and lower and just less involved. So not that we're expecting an answer, but hey, when it comes Monday, just something to regurgitate back to your colleagues.
No, I don't disagree. It's frustrating. I mean, they've tried to accommodate by recordings and stuff, but real quick, because she didn't say it, DeMott for Colorado, FOR,
Yeah.
because we
for
need her at the
Colorado.
State House, in my opinion.
Well, and guys, it's just one last really quick thing for me is one of the things that people aren't considering is that small businesses are the tax base for our government. So for all of the social programs, the police, the fire, your jobs, and I don't mean that as a slam to you at all, but our governments are hurting right now because their financial coffers are empty because people have been shut down. So even more, get out there and talk to your city council members and let's get everyone open, because right now there's still bars, pubs, there's probably movie theaters, a
Gyms.
whole bunch of places, gyms. Well, gyms, the epitome of health, right? We need to get people back working out and being healthy. But yeah, so I'm worried that we're about to see a huge tax increase from the state because they're going to say, hey, we have a huge budget shortfall, so everybody's tax is about to go up, which is going to be kind of a double sword for the small business owners that's just trying to stay alive right now. So I think we all need to stand up and say, let's get back open, let's get back to work. And
Let's get representation in there who won't bring
Thank
you
you.
new taxes, who will.
Don't bring new taxes. You got my vote, Vanessa.
All right. Well, thank you, Jennifer. And hey, when you decide to bring Water's Edge a second location, then, maybe you'll consider somewhere up in a HD 29.
You got it.
I would part with, like the president or not, I've heard him refer to this whole thing as a war. And I think about the calculated risks really in war. Like, I mean, we come from generations of, like you said, trailblazers, people who stormed beaches in Normandy and things like that. There's, nobody wants to see any of our citizens die, but the reality of life is also death. And I mean, at some point we have to get back out there if we're going to beat this thing, because the economic devastation, like Bryan said, between food lines and not, that's not a choice I want to see our kids having to deal with their future generations. So, we need to be able to do that and allow people who are willing to take the risks and who aren't in those risk demographics to go out and take some risks if they're willing, so that we can get things moving again, because there's a lot that hinges on it in my mind. So I really appreciate everybody being here tonight. I think it was a good discussion. We probably could have went even longer, but I'm sure people are sick of listening to us. But either way, Jennifer, thank you for what you do. Hopefully we'll be able to join you soon down at the winery. I know you have great product. Bryan, thanks for joining us, and we will talk at you later.
Yep,
We need a
LPR
we need a dad
2018,
joke next time,
toughest class
Jennifer.
ever.
From
Dad joke.
her chef has hilarious jokes.
Oh, my chef has horrible dad jokes. But it's amazing food, and my husband makes amazing wine. So yeah, come on down. We're open 6 days off. Closed on
All right.
Mondays.
Well, that'll
See you
work.
guys soon.
I shared the website in the comments, but please go in there, Jennifer, and feel free to at least put some address. Anything else you want our viewers to know about your winery, and we hope to see you soon. Goodbye, everyone.
Good night.